Karoline. I'm here with my friends and Purrfect developer matches, Chiara and Farah. Thank you all for being here today. We're on the lands of the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung and Bunurong Boonwurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation. We acknowledge that sovereignty over these lands was never ceded, and that it's their enduring connection to and care of the lands that provides us the privilege of working and playing here today. So we send our respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and we also advocate for their meaningful inclusion in Australia's leadership and future. So it was on these beautiful lands. Well, thank you, Farah, for helping me. I forgot to do the slides. It was on these beautiful lands that we had the privilege of developing our web application, Purrfect Match. An application that aspires to connect humans with their perfect owners. Now, if anyone in the room disagrees that cats are our masters, we can have a juicy conversation later. The origin story is a little bit windy. It started on a Saturday night in the shower, where I have most of my ideas. I jumped out, sent Chiara a frantic message about a website that we could create that would support women in tech if they came up against the patriarchy. Now, Chiara is a wonderful feminist and a staunch cat lover, and she never misses an opportunity to combine those two things. So she replied with enthusiasm and this meme, cat against cat calls. When we caught up with Farah to share this idea, I'm quite certain that the only thing she heard was cats. She got madly excited and shared an idea that she had that was essentially Tinder for cats and people. So that conversation was fun, there were a lot of ideas, and in the end a lot of clarity, and it was clear to us that Purrfect Match was the way forward. When we talk about Purrfect Match today, if we mention the client, we're talking about cat shelters. It's our idea that cat shelters could use this tool to match the cats that they have for adoption with families or people looking to adopt. And when we talk about the user, we're talking about those people and families who are interacting with the app at the front end in the browser. So before I stop talking, I'll just mention the roles we took on the team. Chiara, she brought her front-end passion and user experience to the team. Farah also joined Chiara at the front end and was our data geek, coming up with the database schema and populating the database for us. And I worked at the back end and loved it, writing the API and connecting that with our relational database. Chiara, over to you.
Thank you, Caroline. So when bringing Purrfect Match to life, one of the very first few things we did was to decide on our communication and organization tools. And we used Trello for project management, Slack for daily communication, and pull requests on GitHub for code review and code approval. And these really set such a strong working foundation for the rest of the project. It allowed for an harmonious and productive working environment where everyone felt on the same page, included, and empowered to contribute. Before I move on to the technologies that we have used, would you like to have a look at how the app works?
Yes!
Excellent. That's the answer I was waiting for. So if Farah, you can bring up our beautiful landing page, if I may say so. Thank you. So the user is greeted by, is guided by this click on the button, find your Purrfect Match. And here is a series of questions about the user lifestyle that will help find the most suitable cat based on their needs and the user lifestyle. So, I like an indoor cat, and next. No, I don't have any children, and yes, I've got other animals, I've got a cat, and as you can see, we get the options of adding different type of animals. I love grooming my cat, so lots of time. Some time, tons of energy. I'm home most of the time, so 3 to 4 days a week. And then we click on Match Me, and here we get different results. And as you can see, let's have a look at Ginny. Click on the More button, and we get a description of the cat to come soon. And we also, again, get all about the cat needs. If we want to adopt a cat, we click on the Adopt Me button, and we get next actions would call to adopt the cat. So that's how the app works. So when creating the user interface, our guiding principles have been simplicity, ease of use, and of course responsiveness. We took a mobile-first design approach, and when we came to choose a front-end framework to use, since we hadn't learned any at Holberton yet, we wanted to pick one that was widely used in the industry, so that we could continue our learning journey into the workplace, and also being able to offer since day one. And that's why we picked React.js with JavaScript. We also use some plain CSS, and we use libraries like Bootstrap React, Bootstrap, and Axios for data fetching. It was a big challenge, big learning curve to learn React on the go, and we're going to hear more about that challenge later in this presentation. To communicate with the backend, we've used a REST API, and I'm going to hand it over to Karoline to talk more about the backend.
Thank you. As I said, I loved doing the backend. It was very fun to take the parts of what we learned through the course and make something actually work. The night that Farah and I tested the front and the back end together, our little Slack thread had 107 very excited messages to each other. So the API was written in Python and served with Flask, and we used SQL Alchemy ORM to facilitate the connection with the MySQL database, and that just created a little bit of magic of turning the database data into Python objects that we could then forward to the front end for our amazing front-end ladies to make it look stunning. Are you afraid to say so myself? Looking a little bit further at the back end, we split our cats in half. No cats were harmed, I promise. The first table just had some general info, not general, specific info, name, age, breed, sex. And then the second table actually had the data that aligned with the user information that came from the front end. So all of those needs that the user said they wanted. So the data came in a request from the front end in the body of the request. We then queried table 2 to filter out the cats that matched, or to bring forward the cats that matched. And then we grabbed those cats and did a query on table 1, so we could get the head and stick it back onto the bottom and provide a gorgeous list of cats to our user. Now I'll hand over to Farah.
So as Chiara said, we had a few challenges along the way. Probably the first challenge that we had was that we've never started a project from scratch, so we had to discuss quite a lot about the architecture that we wanted to have. We did have to tweak the data organization a little bit. We learned to appreciate the dev on the other end and manage the data that we had that we were sending, and it would be easier for them to work with. The second thing we had to do was learn React, which we'd never learned before. So there was so many tutorials available online, so we learned pretty quickly how to cherry pick the things that we needed, and then apply that new knowledge to our project. And then we had our family members test out the app, and we found out pretty quickly that what was obvious to us wasn't necessarily obvious to the user. An example of this was we did have an option to choose no for other animals, and the first thing the user asked was, how can I choose no? So then developing that, we learned that quickly things can snowball. Originally we just had to have a no option, and then I thought maybe we just don't have that appeal until they click yes, and then trying to make that happen was a lot harder than we thought it would be. We learned to manage our expectations a little better, and also just allow a bit more time for something that might be seemingly simple actually turned out to be a little more difficult than we thought it might be. We found that across a lot of the features that we wanted to implement. The non-technical challenges is that we did want to add feature after feature after feature. As you all know, very exciting to add new things, but we had to step back and look at our project and realize that we'd actually achieved our MVP, that we had a project working from start to finish, and we chose to actually refine what we had rather than add new things to that. And then finally, distraction by cats. We love cats. We got distracted with the photos of them, filling out all the details, and then, you know, we really wanted these cats to get adopted. As Karoline mentioned as well, we had a lot of things that we wanted to implement. If we wanted this to proceed in real life, we probably have to do a lot more market research to see what the client would like, as well as unit testing just for more stability. We really wanted to build a client interface where the shelter could put in their own cat data. We'd have to protect against SQL injections and just use a secure connection to that as well. Finally, for deployment, we would have liked to use a load balancer, such as Nginx, to deploy for that, as well as a web server, and then host it on a cloud service, so that different shelters could log in and then manage their own databases from that as well. Improved user experience. We only had the user contact the shelter. We would have liked for them to also have a login and then save their set and send that information to the shelter as well. And finally, we would have liked to have a Purrfect Match where we had dogs, but since we're all crazy cat ladies, we decided to stick with cats. And that's it. And we'd like to acknowledge, we'd like to say thank you to, first of all, our classmates who have been wonderful. Thanks for helping us along the way, as well as our tutor, Jonathan, who's at the back there, as well as our sponsors, RECD, Sportsbet, and REA. Thank you very much. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here. And thanks for giving us jobs, eh? And finally, Q&A. Any questions?
Janet.
Yeah, I've got one. You said at the end that you wanted to do Purrfect Match in the future. What would be the key differences between Purrfect Match and Purrfect Match? Like, why couldn't you just do that now?
I think, well, with the cats, we weren't so stringent on a lot of the questions, the answers, because most shelters want to give away cats. I think with dogs, there's a lot more requirements that you'd have. You'd have to check on the backyard, safe for children, that sort of stuff. So I think we'd have a different type of matching algorithm probably for that as well.
Also a lot more in the database.
Different breeds, loads more. Get distracted by the dogs this time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers the question.
Karen?
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good to see the work. I'm interested, it sounds like you had a choice of 1,001 different platforms, tech and things that you chose. How did you decide the ones that you chose, and were there any others that wanted to dabble but just decided not to?
For me, at the back end, I stuck with what we had used through the program. I really wanted to understand deeply how what we had done in the smaller project was actually working. And then I really wanted to deploy it on AWS, but just didn't get there. But it's a passion that I'll keep kicking away at. At the front end.
Front end, really, for me, I knew that REA is using React.js, so that was a smart choice. I did want to try so we went with Bootstrap for styling, Bootstrap library. There were other libraries that I wanted to do as well, like material, tutorial design, but yeah, we just stick with one. It would be better to go with one library.
The one that was widely used as well. I think React is used in a lot of companies as well. So
React Bootstrap.
Oh, sorry, I would just React in general.
Yeah.
We just all wanted to use something that was widely used. Yes, we have the choice to use that.
Hello. So the site's got character and space. How did you land on the look and feel?
We
kind of talked.
Yeah, we talked it through. I think we sort of went on and on about should we do something so cutesy and silly, and then we thought we both really like it, so why not? Yeah, something a bit silly.
Yeah, and I think really the simplicity, as I mentioned earlier, having something really kind of clean in the design,
And obvious. We wanted it to be
Yeah.
really obvious for the user as well, like what to do at each point, so that there wasn't any confusion. Yeah, and plus I like cute cats.
I have to give Farah a lot of credit for the hours she spent scouring the internet for those cute cat images that
Way too much time.
Sorry.
Yeah. How did you coordinate the interactions between the front end and the back end? Was it front end said, I need this, and then you provide some APIs, or like, here's some APIs, do they work for you? How did you come to an agreement on what that means?
Lots of Slack
A
messages.
lot of discussion.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
don't like it like that.
That was a
Feel like
learning
this.
curve. Like I remember doing the back end and thinking, I don't really know what they need from me, or I don't know what I'm going to get from them, but they were still developing that part as well. Then we just arrived at this beautiful moment where it was like, well, here's what you're going to get, and I thought, great, I can work with that.
There were a few instances where we were like, oh, that's not going to work for me. You're going to have to change that data type.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Bit of
So,
negotiation.
Yeah.
There is no React.js 9 months completion curriculum at the moment. What did you find in the curriculum that you went through helped you in learning a new language?
I think really personally, what I really learned at Holberton is the ability to learn by myself and be able to read the documentation and understand it enough to get started. So that played a big part, as Farah mentioned. There's so many tutorials, and to have that ability, that skill that we learn, to know what do I need to know now to get this going, and what do I not need to know now and can come back later. Probably having a bit of JavaScript.
Yeah, we learned a bit of JavaScript, but funnily enough, actually, I wasn't a huge fan of C. I really did not like it. Understatement, I was not a fan. But just learning the logic within that actually made it a lot easier for me to learn the logic within React. So I saw at the end, finally, appreciated the value of learning a difficult language in the beginning. It makes learning other languages a lot easier later on.
That's very true.
I don't think I could have learned it as quickly if I hadn't already learned something like C in the beginning.
In terms of obviously coding and stuff, you're all working together. How did you guys go finding writing at the end of the day when we get into this sort of role? We're going to be reading a lot more code than we are going to be actually coding. How did you guys find reading each other's code and trying to understand what the other one was doing?
I didn't really learn React for this, so then read like some of the pull requests for React. I was like, but it was good. It was good to provide feedback, to get feedback. I didn't actually, maybe because we've learned the same things together, we kind of coded the same way. I think in the workplace that's going to be a lot more challenging. Reading senior devs code is going to be, it was good.
Actually, it's interesting you mentioning that, because I did have a moment where I was reading Farah's code in React, and I thought, oh wow, I'm reading someone else's code and I need to do some styling and I need to get my head around classes, and it was a fantastic experience that really gave me a little taste of what it will be.
And seeing other people's code as well. And one thing actually that I loved was at one point I read Karoline's code and I understood it, which I don't know. About 3 months in, I couldn't look at someone else's code. If I hadn't done it that way, I wouldn't know what they were doing. But the point where I read it, I'm like, oh, I know what she's doing. That was really nice.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well done.